Welcome to We Are The Hansons, where chaos meets courage and the beauty of motherhood shines through every challenge. I'm Maya Hanson, a mom, navigating the wild, wonderful, and often overwhelming world of raising 13 kids. Join me as I share the real, raw, and relatable struggles of motherhood, from the sleepless nights to the joyful victories and everything in between. This is a space for every mom who feels like they are juggling a million hats and still searching for time to breathe. Because let's face it, motherhood isn't always picture perfect, but it's always worth it. This is We Are The Hansons. I'm the host, Maya Hanson, and I'm going to start off by giving you guys a little background from when I was young. When I was 18 years old, I found out that I was pregnant. I was juggling 2 jobs, and I was scared. I was really scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. I made contact with the baby's dad, and I let him know that he was going to be a father. In return, I was told by him that he didn't want no other children, as he had children of his own already. And he tried to convince me to get an abortion. And that was not happening. I was not going through that. Later on down the road, I had a friend who I'd been friends with for quite some time. His name was Jeremy. And I was about 6 weeks pregnant with my baby. He reached out to me and asked me if I would like to go to dinner with him at his mom's. I was pretty scared. I was very nervous. I didn't want his family to think poorly of me because here I'm a new mom. I'm 18. I'm pregnant. And now I'm with another man going to dinner with him. We weren't even dating at that point. We were just friends. But I had a feeling that he kind of liked me, and I started having the feeling of liking him as well. I was starting to fall for him, as he was the person that I could talk to and tell things to and get advice from. It was not easy to let him know that I was going to have a baby, but he was that friend, the friend that I really enjoyed having in my life. Well, needless to say, I ended up taking him up on his offer of going to dinner at his mom's. And we went to dinner. Me being scared. I didn't want them to think bad of me. I didn't want them to think bad of him for seeing a girl. You know, you just, as a parent, you get those feelings like, is my son or daughter going to be okay with having to deal with, like my situation, a person that's going to have a baby, that's going to have to deal with the bio father and all of the chaos that comes along with it. And he ended up eventually asking me out to date. I did accept and started dating him. We ended up about 3 years later, my daughter Morgan, we went through the court system because her bio father owned 3 liquor stores and never wanted to pay child support, even though it was court ordered that he pay. The court order, he would pay, but it wasn't the amount that he was ordered to pay. I got a check in the mail for 95 cents, which wasn't even enough to cash the check, for one. But he was trying, is what the court said. So nothing was ever done about it. Well, one day he decided that he was going to take me back to court to reduce child support, even though he wasn't paying the amount he was ordered. We ended up going to court, and while I'm at court, he served me with a court order to take me back to court for part custody of Morgan. At this point, I was upset because he hadn't been involved in her life at all. 3 years of not being involved, barely helping at all with his 95-cent check. I don't know how many parents can buy diapers with 95 cents, but I know it's not even close to enough to buy a pack of diapers or shoes or clothes or any needs she had. Jeremy was always the dad, always helped pay for anything she needed, always provided us with a stable roof over our heads, and made sure that we had food. Me and him put together everything we had. We were both working. We were both providing. We had other children to provide for as well. But at this time, I was like, I'm not giving in to this court. I am not giving in to him. He has not been a part of our life. I mean, it was very rough at that time. I ended up going home from court that day, me and Morgan. And I told Jeremy that I was packing my things and I was leaving. He looked at me and he said, Maya, you can't run. You have to face it because you're going to get in trouble if you take off and not go to court. He said, get in the car. We're going to go see an attorney. So me being who I am, I listened because he was always the advice giver that I looked up to, the one that I trusted, the one that I cared about. We ended up going to an attorney, and we walked in, and mind you, we have other children, so it was not easy with money. Money was always tight for us. We went in, and Jeremy had $500 in his pocket. And the attorney said, it's going to be $2,500 to start this case. And I just started crying. I didn't know how I was going to come up with that money. Jeremy knew that I was struggling with sadness and depression at that point. He said to the attorney, I have $500. Will you take the $500 and start the case? And in 2 weeks, we'll bring back $2,000 and pay you. The attorney kind of, hee-hawed around, and he said, I'll take it. My heart sank when he said that because I thought, wow, things are really starting to look up for us. We're going to have an attorney. We're going to be able to get this figured out. I was not the parent that was going to let a man who had never been around my child, never met my child, take her for a full summer without not having any contact with me. That'd be like somebody taking your child away and putting them in a home where they don't know anybody there. They've never been around the person. At 3 years old, 3.5 years old, I was not going to put my child through that. So regardless, we got the attorney, and me and Jeremy left the office and went home, and it was probably an hour or two later, the attorney contacted us, and he said that he had gotten all the paperwork filed, that he was the attorney for us, and we just wait to see what happens. Well, next court hearing came around, and went to court, and he entered his appearance at the court hearing and pretty much said that we were going to be filing some other motions. I ended up having to do a counseling thing, like a mediation type deal with the bio father, and that did not work because he wanted to take her all summer, no contact with me, and then return her at the end of summer. And I just couldn't do that to my kid. I just could not do it. I knew she'd be scared. She wouldn't know anybody. Granted, a lot of people say, well, she'd get to know him, but that just wasn't the case. She had never met this person. And I don't know about any of you, if you guys would put your child through that, but I kind of looked back and thought, if my parents did that to me, oh, I'd be devastated. So mediation didn't work. My attorney asked me a week after mediation, after the mediator said that it just wasn't working, what I wanted to do next. Me and Jeremy met with him. Jeremy told him that he would like to adopt my daughter, Morgan, through step-parent adoption. So he wrote all the paperwork up and sent an email to my daughter's bio father and let him know that Jeremy has been Morgan's dad for all these years, has been providing for her, going to doctor's appointments with her, being there for her since she was born. Well, he said, we'll see how this goes. The attorney did. And we'll go from there. Well, he received an email back a couple hours after he had sent the email to the bio dad. And the bio dad said that he was willing to sign off his rights to Jeremy through step-parent adoption if we dropped child support and we removed all the arrears from his name. When the attorney made contact with us, me and Jeremy said, let's do it. Let's just be done with it. So the attorney ended up putting in his motions and getting all the paperwork drawn up for step-parent adoption. Obviously, when it comes to a child through step-parent adoption, you have to go through the DFS. You have to go through a guardian ad litem that represents the child. You have to go through the Department of Family Services and all these hoops to jump. And we did it. We jumped through the hoops, and the day finally came where we had to go to court to finalize the step-parent adoption. I can tell you, it was one of the happiest days of my life. I have never felt such relief, such happiness, and such emotion than I felt that day. We walked into court. The bio father did not want to face us in court, so he did his voicing over the phone. And we got in there in front of the judge, and we realized that the judge in this adoption was my husband's children from his previous marriage's old guardian ad litem. He was his kids' guardian ad litem at one point before he became a judge. We walked into that courtroom with the guardian ad litem, me and my husband, our attorney, and the DFS social worker. And the judge called our case, and it was almost like he knew. He knew how we were. He knew what we were going through. And he looked at us, said what he had to say. The guardian ad litem had spoke for a brief moment on Morgan's behalf and made sure that she talked to the bio father and make sure that, you know, there was no threats made to him to force him into doing this, which nobody had to threaten him. It was just his way of getting out of it, if you know what I mean. The judge got up and pretty much looked at us and said, "We have a well-known, upstanding gentleman here that's willing to take on the responsibilities of a child that is not his. And we today are granting to finalize this step-parent adoption to Jeremy Hanson." Of course, me, who I am, wear my heart on my sleeves a lot of the times, broke down in tears, happy tears for that. My husband, Jeremy, broke down in happy tears, and that was the end of the adoption. I mean, it was over. It was done. We didn't have to deal with that anymore. It was amazing, the feeling that we had. Well, that was the end of that. Jeremy was now my daughter Morgan's dad. And we ended up having 2 boys and another daughter. And then we ended up moving to Missouri, where we ended up having another daughter, Torin, and our final addition, Annalyn. That was kind of a train wreck going through that. I was told after Torin that I would never be able to have children. My uterus was pretty bad, and I had a major hemorrhage in my uterus. I ended up going to the hospital because I was hemorrhaging, and they did blood tests and urine samples to see if I was pregnant. Both of those came back negative. I was pretty scared at that point since, you know, they couldn't figure out why I was hemorrhaging. I didn't know what was going to happen. Well, the doctor came in and said he was ordering an ultrasound to see exactly where the hemorrhage was. The ultrasound tech came in about 20 minutes later, did my ultrasound, and said, "Well, your pregnancy test came back negative, but I am detecting a heartbeat. So there's got to be a baby in there somewhere." The doctor came in and spoke to me. He told me and Jeremy that the hemorrhage was so big in my uterus that it was blocking the baby, so they could not see the fetus. I was nervous. I was scared. I was sad. Jeremy was scared and nervous. We couldn't believe that we were having another baby. Well, needless to say, we had given everything we had for babies away because we were told we weren't going to have babies anymore. And I ended up carrying a baby, 5 months, and my water broke. We did not tell anyone that we were having a baby because we were told at the hospital when we found out we were pregnant that our baby was not going to make it. She would not live at all. They said even if I carried her full term, which was doubtful, that she wasn't going to make it. At 5 months, 5.5 months, my water had broke and I ended up in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 16 days, living a life of hell, not knowing if my baby was going to survive because what the doctors were saying. They were trying to get me to do abortion, and that was a big no-no for me. When you have doctors and nurses pushing you to just get an abortion because your baby is not going to make it, I snapped. I said some foul language is what I said. There was some very harsh words spoke and told to the doctors that were forcing and pushing. Needless to say, I sat there for 16 days with the broken water in the hospital, fighting through every day, missing my other children at home, missing my family, not knowing what the next steps were going to be. But all I knew is I had to keep fighting for her, my baby. Well, at that point, everybody knew that I was going to be a mom again. Because when you end up in a hospital and you ask for prayer, everybody wants to know what those prayers are for. And we ended up telling everybody what those prayers were for. 16th day came around, and I had started feeling sick at day 14. And day 15, it started getting worse, and I kept telling the nurses that I was sick and there was something wrong. For them to not listen to my cries for help. Day 16, the nurse came in that morning to put me on the monitors to monitor baby's heart rate and everything, because I was only on those twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. And I had just eaten breakfast, and she got me on the monitors. And about 5 minutes after being on the monitor, the nurse came back in and she said, "Can you drink some orange juice?" And I said, "Is there something wrong?" And she said, "I am not liking the looks of the baby on the monitor." And my heart sank at that point because I thought, maybe my baby ain't going to make it. Maybe they're right. So I sent Jeremy a message as he was at home with the other children, and I said, they said that the baby wasn't looking good on the monitor, and I'm not sure what was going to happen from there. Jeremy being an hour away was hard because, what if something happened? Was he going to make it in time? Was he going to be able to be there to help me through the rough patch? Because he was my support. He was my person. Well, needless to say, the orange juice didn't work. So they ordered an emergency ultrasound. The ultrasound tech came in and put me on the, did the monitors, was doing all the sonograms to see what was happening. And while I'm looking at the sonogram on the computer, I see my baby not moving one bit. And my heart sank because at that moment, yes, I was hearing a heartbeat, but my baby was not well. I knew it. And they put these colors on the screen. One is red and one is blue, and one is for the fluid in there and one is for the blood flow. And I didn't see not one speck of blue fluid. No amniotic fluid whatsoever. My baby was sitting in there with nothing. My cries for help didn't matter. They didn't listen. My sickness was because my baby was dying because of no fluid. She was living in nothing. At that point, they sent the doctor in to tell me I was going in for an emergency C-section, and I needed to let my husband know he needed to hurry. Otherwise, he wasn't going to make it for the C-section. I contacted him right away and said they were getting me prepped for surgery, that he needed to hurry up because at that point, I wanted somebody to be there. I didn't know if he was going to make it, and my baby was lifeless. I also made contact with my mom, who lived 10 minutes from the hospital. And I said, Mom, I need you to get here. They're taking me in for an emergency C-section, and I don't know if my baby's going to make it. And I don't want to go through this alone. I didn't know at that point if Jeremy was going to make it in time, but all I did know is I needed some support. Somebody that was going to walk with me through this train wreck. My mom made it as they were getting ready to haul me off to the operating room. My mom got all gowned up. They took me back and they told my mom they would be back to get her when they were ready. I ended up going into the operating room and I got in there. They did my spinal tap. They got me ready to go. And they said, Maya, we are going to go get your mom now. They walked out. A few minutes go by and I hear somebody say, Maya. And I said, yes. And now mind you, the door to the operating room is behind my head. So I can't see who's coming in. All I could see is a room full of NICU doctors, NICU nurses, respiratory therapists, the nurses for the operation, and the doctors that were doing the operating. I looked up and I said, yes. And the nurse said, do you recognize this person? And I said, oh my gosh, it was Jeremy. He came. He made it in time to be there. It was like prayers were answered. All I could do was pray, pray, pray. And when I looked up and seen Jeremy, I started bawling my eyes out because I was so happy that he could be there. Even though I wanted my mom to be there, I was happy because this was our baby. And I didn't want him to miss. If something wasn't right, I didn't want him to miss her or being able to see her take her first breath or being able to see her take her last breath. I didn't want him to miss that. I was already a mess going in there. So, well, after Anna was born, they intubated her immediately because she was not breathing. I went through getting a tube ligation, so I couldn't have no more children. I didn't want to go through that hell again. And I also went through the whole getting me stitched back up and on the road to recovery. My baby was taken right from the NICU, or right from the operating room to the NICU. And all I can remember sitting in recovery was, is my baby okay? Is she alive? And that was the question I just kept asking. And I kept telling Jeremy, go ask how my baby was doing because I was worried. They did tell me that my baby was okay and that she was intubated and on a ventilator, but she was in stable condition. Serious but stable condition. Needless to say, I begged them to take me to see her before I was taken to postpartum. They ended up taking me there. I didn't get to touch her. I didn't get close to her as I was in a hospital bed myself, but I wanted to see my baby. So I ended up getting to see her. I was told that my baby contracted a blood infection from being in the womb with no amniotic fluid for so long. She ended up contracting the blood infection, which was called Enterobacter. And on top of her blood infection, she ended up with spinal meningitis. And we were told that she had a brain hemorrhage and fluid on the brain, which was caused by proteins that plugged her ventricles. Those proteins plugged her ventricles and caused the fluid to just sit on top of her brain. We ended up having a doctor come in, a neurologist, that was tapping the brain to release the pressure and fluid on the brain so that she was not a vegetable. He tapped her for several weeks, and she was on very strong antibiotics, many antibiotics and meds to help battle the blood infection and the spinal meningitis, both of which are deadly. I was super mad at God for not helping. Like, I felt like he wasn't helping us. I felt like my little girl was going through this and shouldn't have been. Why her? Why not me? At that point, I blamed him for everything. God was the blame. God, why? I kept asking him. And Jeremy said, stop blaming God for this. Stop blaming God for this. It's not God's fault. I ended up turning to our pastor, our youth pastor at church, Jeff. And I said, Jeff, I need you to come. I need prayer. I need guidance. I need you to come to the hospital. I need relief. Jeff immediately showed up with Tracy, his wife, to the hospital. They came to the NICU, and we all prayed. We prayed for a long time. After our prayer, Jeff told me that I needed to continue to pray and that Jeremy needed to continue to pray, and we needed to ask for prayer from family and friends. So I turned to Facebook and reached out to family and friends all over the world for prayer. And I'm telling you, everyone, there are people that don't believe in the power of prayer. And I can tell you, I believe in the power of prayer now. God listened and answered our prayers, everyone's prayers. My little girl is now 7 years old. The little girl I was told would not survive, would not be able to walk, would not be able to talk, would not be a survivor. She is here today with me and Jeremy, walking, talking, and living life like any other child we have. Yes, we do have our struggles. She is struggling now with seizures. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything, but her life is here. She is living. And if we can battle through her being born 3 months early, having a shunt placed in her brain to drain fluids at a month old, and now at 7 years old battling seizures, if we can make it through those hurdles of all that she went through as a baby until now, we can continue to battle through the hoops that we're jumping now. Alls I ask every day is for prayer, and I will continue to pray as well. And with the power of prayer, we can get through anything. And as a mom, yeah, it is hard to see my little girl have to go through all of this, but we can do it. We've got it. I know we got it. We've gone through worse than this, and we will make it. Now, that was some dark times in our life, and especially mine as a mom. I mean, it's hard for me to see my baby go through that, and my kids go through that. But we can do it. I mean, sometimes it takes an army to get us through. But me and Jeremy are a team, and we've teamed up, and we are a dang good team. And we got each other to lean on, and we can do it. That was just some of our challenges as a family. And, starting over as a single mom from being 18, I didn't think that Jeremy was going to stick around, I thought I was going to be a single mom forever. There ain't too many guys out there that would take on a role of playing daddy to somebody else's kid. And here we are, 22 years later, living life to its fullest and going through life with 13 kids. It's been an adventure. Yes, we've had our struggles. We've had our ups and downs. But I'm here to tell you, life ain't easy. But you can do it. You just got to put your mind to it. You got to deal with the struggles, deal with the challenges, deal with the highs and lows, the joys, the victories, it's crazy. But you can do it. Don't ever think that you're alone. There is somebody out there for everyone. Regardless if you have children, if you don't have children, if you can't have children, there is somebody out there for you. So, that being said, I'm going to end my story, and me and Jeremy are going to do a segment together, and I may just have one of our children join us in our story, our next show, just so that we can see how they feel as one of our children and how they feel we've done as parents raising 13 kids. So everybody, watch out for the next episode of We Are The Hansons. Thank you for being here today.